Welcome back to Tracy Take Tuesday, where we release a mock draft every Tuesday between now and the Tuesday right before the 2025 NFL Draft. My name's Tyler, here with my brother Ryan, and today we will be doing my seventh mock draft so far of the 2025 offseason. It's going to be a lot of fun. Ryan's going to be providing some commentary every couple of picks or so, and we would love to hear any feedback possible on the picks that you see. So we're going to get into that here in a second, but before we do that, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, tackle that bell, and while you're at it, leave a like and a comment. Let us know what you want to see your team do in the first round of this year's draft. And Ryan, that being said, let's pull up PFF here,
Let's
and
do it.
I'm trying to mix these drafts up, especially too once we come April, start to get a lot more serious as because we'll have a lot more information by then here. So the first four players have not changed for me. Their order has changed. And so I try to look at this from Tennessee's standpoint. And obviously they need a quarterback. There's a lot of things that they need. Just in general. I went with the theory like what let's hypothetically say let's say Sam Darnold, he loves Nashville. And honestly, I lived in Nashville for about 5 years. It is a great city. Sam Darnold, if you want to move there, no state income tax, so you get to keep a lot more of the $100 million contract that you're going to get. It would make sense. Tennessee Titans, they're looking for a quarterback. I think he would come in. Don't know if he'd see the same success in Minnesota because he was on an amazing team there in Minnesota, had great role players there, but I think he could still find some success for the contract that he's there. So, what happens if Tennessee looks in a different direction? What like they want to address some of their other needs here? I personally really like their defensive line. Like, could they maybe add an edge rusher as they were a little low in sacks? Yes, but I still think they have a very beefy defensive line, and I think they can also. This is such a deep defensive line class. I think they can go address needs, the defensive line need later on. So here they kind of really just honestly leaves one other option. I mean, as of right now, I don't see Tedero McMillan, Mason Graham, Ashton Genty, or Will Campbell jumping up into the number one spot. So that really just leaves Travis Hunter left. And it's weird me saying that because also too prospect wise, he's one of the craziest prospects we've seen in a long time. And if you're Tennessee, you need secondary help. L'Jarius Sneed, he didn't really play in that many games, and just in general, you would want to just keep improving that secondary, especially too when you're looking at the division that you have right now, where you're going to be going up against Nico Collins, going to be going up against now Brian Thomas Jr. You do have a lot of, I think, at least good receivers in Indianapolis that you'd have to deal with Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, A.D. Mitchell, and who knows who else that they're going to bring in. So having a solid, like at minimum, like a solid corner, if not potentially like an elite lockdown corner and Travis Hunter ceiling, I think is a great first overall pick for Tennessee. So leading into the Cleveland, I hadn't done this in a little while, especially too with Travis Hunter now being taken off the board, with Myles Garrett being potential trade options. Maybe they go Abdul Carter, but once again, similar to Tennessee, this is such a deep defensive line class. I think they can address that need later on, and they have a lot of picks as well. So here, I think they take a gamble on a quarterback. I have them going with Cam Ward with the second overall pick here. And then for the Giants, they luck out. Shador Sanders falls down to them. Not really too much to think about. I think Shador would honestly I think his personality would fit that New York fame really well. I think the media up there would love him. We've seen guys go into New York, aka Sam Darnold, and a lot of potential. He was super young, but the media just ate him alive. Zach Wilson has done that, and anybody in the New York media as well. So I think Shador Sanders as well too. And also too on top of that, I think his skill set I think would really match what Brian Dable is looking for. You really do just need a facilitator. You don't need somebody
Mhm.
with a super electric arm. That's maybe one of the cons for Shador Sanders, but someone who is extremely accurate, poised in the pocket, can go through his reads really well. And I think that's what Sanders brings to the table. Now you have Malik Neighbors that he can throw to, and there's going to be a lot of other good receivers and tight ends that Giants can go and pick up to go and help protect him. That he can throw to. Now, protection, that's going to be a bigger issue that they're also going to need to address somehow through free agency or also maybe with their second round pick as their pick at 34th overall. Moving on now to your Patriots. This is where I've thought a lot about this on what other potential players could be this spot. We'll have to see how Ted McMillan does in the combine, see how Mason Graham does in the combine as well. I'm also too wouldn't be surprised Ashton Genty. Just saying, but until the combine, until we really get to see how those players stack up against not only other people in their position, but also too against each other here. I'm sticking with Abdul Carter as well. I think that's just a great add to your team. Potential trade back spot goes away now with two quarterbacks taken off the board. If one of the quarterbacks does fall to your New England Patriots, I do feel that that's going to be a potential spot for them to trade back, i.e., the Raiders, the Jets. Now, well, the Jets wouldn't trade with the Patriots. I think that would be crazy. Actually, I don't know. Now, just real quick, who would the Jets trade for? I don't think. I mean, maybe the Browns, but we'll have to kind of wait and see. But
Maybe.
that's
Yeah.
a separate conversation. That'd be another actually interesting video for us to do. But real quick, kind of before I continue, very similar story for these four names here, different order, of course, but
Yeah.
want to get your overall thoughts.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a good continuation of that trend. I think these 4 are gonna be the first in whatever order, the first 4 names that we hear, come late April. So, Travis Hunter, I think, to the Titans makes a lot of sense. The biggest thing that I wanna keep preaching about this quarterback class is, like, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, while, yes, they're first-round quarterbacks, they're not the elite quarterback prospects of last year or even, like, the Bryce Young, CJ Stroud class. They have some like positive traits. They both have some warts and red flags that make me concerned about them. And if I'm a GM, granted, Tennessee has a new GM. They're going in with a second year head coach. Like they're not really on the hot seat at the moment. And so like maybe they're more willing to take a big swing on a quarterback because if they miss early enough, maybe they'll get a
Yeah.
second attempt. Where like New York, with the Giants, it was pretty clear by ownership that if they do not find success this season, they will be out of the job there, whether it's Joe Shane, Brian Daboll, or both of them. So I do think you have to take the swing on a quarterback if you're not in love or like one of these blue chip players doesn't fit your needs. And when I say blue chip players, the only 2 I have on my board are Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. And so I think it'll be really interesting to see kind of where teams value these quarterbacks if they do trade out, if they're not in love with a team like the Jets that want to move up. I do think the Patriots getting Abdul Carter. I'm a big fan of Abdul Carter. I think this is a dream scenario for them. Please stop spreading Ashton Genty to the Patriots into the universe. I think
Absolutely not.
I think
Absolutely.
Ramondre Stevenson is fine for now. This is a deep running back class. They can invest in it later. I do not think Ashton Genty is a I don't want to say I do not think that he's a potential Patriot. If they trade back and get him, I think that's fine. But they're at 4. I would hate that pick. There, I think Abdul Carter, if he's there, that is the pick. I'd run it up to the podium. But yeah, I'm excited to see where the rest of this mock draft goes from here.
I will say now in our post mock draft videos of like the post draft recap videos, the Patriots take Ashton Genty 4th overall. I'm giving them an A plus automatically, mainly
Uh,
just because it would piss you off. They could do no matter what else they do for the rest of the draft. I would absolutely love it. So,
I would
uh,
draft if I'm the Patriots. I would draft Will Campbell or Calvin Banks before I draft Ashton Genty at 4.
I don't know about Kelvin Banks. Will Campbell, I can understand. So, moving on now to Jacksonville. This is where I think, as of right now, the draft really begins. Jacksonville can go in so many different directions. Uh, they could go Mason Graham. They could go Will Johnson. They could go Will Campbell. They can no, not James Pierce Jr. Sorry, I was about to say James Pierce. They could maybe even go Malachi Starks. That might be kind of early for a safety. They can maybe even go Tep McMillan and get like an amazing 1-2 rookie receiver combo. That one's more of a stretch. But the one name I left out, this is who I'm going to be going with here. But um, we obviously know Jacksonville, they have stud edge rushers and Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen. They need a lot of help, I think, on the interior and getting Mason Graham, one of the best defensive tackles that we've seen in a long time. I think you can make an argument he's one of the blue chips, I think, as well. I know you said, too, you can make an argument that he's one of the 3 or potentially 4. I guess it depends on how you define blue chip. But I think Mason Graham comes in there and we'll see this Jacksonville Jaguars defense improve already. It's very low bar to beat as they were one of the worst defenses last year. I think statistically, actually, defensively, they were just absolutely I think last in almost every category. Especially too when it comes to passing yards,
Yeah.
31st overall in total yards. They were last when it comes to passing yards allowed. But Mason Graham, I think, is going to provide a lot of attention on the interior, giving more one-on-one opportunities, and potentially even to allow kind of what we saw at the Super Bowl, allow the defense to really only have to rush, be able to rush 4 while dropping back 7, which is going to provide a lot more, a lot less pressure on the secondary to have to defend and make it tougher on the
Mhm.
offense to move the ball. So here now at Las Vegas, once again, several different ways they could go. They could go Ted McMillan here. I could absolutely see that, and that maybe honestly might be some of my maybe personal preferred option. I went a different route though. I went with the other skill position player. I went with, I guess, on the other side of the ball, I should say. Went with Will Johnson, cornerback here. I think secondary is a major need for this team, and very similar to kind of what I said about Jacksonville. When healthy, when you have this Las Vegas Raiders defensive line with Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins leading the way, then they even have Malcolm Kuntz. They did draft Tyree Wilson a couple years ago. He hasn't really
Yeah.
panned out, but maybe there's still that potential that when healthy, they can get everything together. They have Robert Spillane, linebacker there in the middle, who is a free agent. They'll probably re-sign him, but I really like the production that he's had. But if they can get some better help in the secondary, if this defense can stay healthy, I think you go get a potential lockdown corner in Will Johnson, make it even that much more difficult to score against this Raiders defense, who a lot of times they really only have to rush for just because of how much pressure Max Crosby and that defensive line can bring when healthy. So here with the New York Jets, Jets informed Aaron Rodgers that they will not be bringing him back. Also, probably means they will not be bringing Devontae Adams back as well. So, whoever the quarterback is going to be, there is going to be a big void at that receiver spot. You have Garrett Wilson, yes, but who else outside of that? This is where I do have Ted McMillan coming off the board here. I do think I agree with a lot of Jets fans. I think Mason Graham is probably option number one. If he falls there, but in this instance, he did not fall there, and I think Ted McMillan is a great option number two. And so, very curious on Raiders fans if Mason Graham and Ted McMillan were both here, who would you all want to see? Because I think the argument could go either way. I probably would go towards Mason Graham just because you do still have Garrett Wilson and you can go and get a solid round two receiver, round three receiver. So, here with Carolina, it's so hard for me to get off of defensive line here for this team. This defensive line was just so bad. So I have James Pierce Jr. coming off the board here. I think Mason Graham would be a great option. Maybe a sneaky other Michigan defensive lineman who's coming up here on the next pick. Maybe they want to reach out for them, really beef up the interior. But a guy like James Pierce Jr. though, absolute stud, great career at Tennessee. Coming into the season was like the almost a clear cut favorite, like first overall pick. I know him and Travis Hunter were maybe going back and forth, but so again, him here in the top 10, I think he's going to come into a great team, and the Panthers beef up this defensive line. You can maybe make an argument that Panthers go just entirely defensive line for this entire draft. I need to see how many picks that they end up having before I kind of make that broad judgment. I don't know. Never mind. They have like 9 picks. So maybe the defensive line was that bad. So maybe they do go 9 defensive
Yeah.
linemen.
They do
And
have
just hope
they do have a lot of picks.
so.
So,
We'll have to kind of wait and see. But trenches and secondary is also a need for them as well. I kind of teased it just a second ago, but similar to the Panthers, I think defensive line is going to be the biggest need here for the team. They do need skill position players, but I know Kenneth Grant, they rank him here at 23rd overall. But if you go look at the Saints team, Cameron Jordan's getting up there in age. If he didn't already retire, I'm trying to remember actually what they said at the Super Bowl. I didn't know if he retired or not, or is thinking about it. But either way, though, he is still getting up there in age. They need a lot of help on the defensive interior, and I think getting a guy like Kenneth Grant, I think like the other stud on that Michigan defensive line. This might maybe be a little bit early for him, but with his overall size and I think the attention that he'll bring to the defensive interior, and if you go and look at their division now, Carolina Panthers were one of the top rushing teams with Chuba Hubbard. They do have Jonathan Brooks, who's going to be covered from an ACL injury, but once again, I think that could be a pretty deadly running back tandem. As the like if they both can stay healthy and Dave Canales' offense can really uh, piece back together. Atlanta's going to have Bijan Robinson as well, and Tyler Algier also to back him up. And then you go look at what Tampa Bay just produced with their amazing offensive line. You're going to need a beefy defensive lineman in the middle to help stop the run. I think that's what Kenneth Grant can bring to
mhm.
this team. Last pick here before I throw it over to you, Chicago Bears. I've gone Will Campbell so many times, so I try to mix this up here. I went one of the reasons why I think they need to beef up the offensive line is to also just help improve the running game. Ben Johnson, as you saw his success, he was one of the reasons why that Detroit Lions offense was so great was how well they were at running the ball. And in order to do that, you need to have an amazing running back. And that's what you get in Ashton Jeanty here. I think they draft Ashton Jeanty here, falling at number 10. I think it's great value. It is a very deep running back class, but he sets himself apart from everybody else. I also think, too, Chicago Bears, they have 2 second round picks at pick 39 and pick 41. And I'm trying to remember how many picks they have just in general overall, but I even think they do have a decent bit. Yeah, they have 8 picks. So, and 4 within the top 72. they can get aggressive. They can go and move up and get a different edge rusher, different defensive lineman, or offensive lineman as well. And you're going to find a lot of capable guys at pick 39 and 41. So, Ryan,
Yeah.
let's quickly recap here. What are your thoughts on picks 5 through 10?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it makes sense. Pretty similar names, I think. We've talked about this in some of our past mock drafts, but I think names like 15, like 1 through 15, are kind of pretty clear, like first round picks. And then like you have a lot of other guys after that, and so I'm really curious to see kind of where this mock draft ends up going. But a lot of these picks make sense so far. Kenneth Grant, I do like. I think especially too with his ability to get upfield at that size, I think it is going to be enticing for a lot of NFL defensive coordinators. And so I think you go look at Kellen Moore, who's coming from Philadelphia. Like I know he's an offensive minded guy, but they have Brian Breesy there. They have Cameron Jordan. It's up in the air whether he's going to retire or not. But you go get Kenneth Grant, who can be that Jordan Davis. Him and Brian Breesy can hold down that interior. You still need to go add edge rushers, but in this class, I think you can easily add edge rushers there
Yeah.
in the second round and third round and even beyond. So I do like all the picks so far. They all kind of make very reasonable sense.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. That was,
Yeah.
I agree also. So, moving on now, I think another very reasonable pick here, San Francisco. If Will Campbell falls to you, I mean, I think they're running to
Yeah.
the ticket center or the draft selection call. What's it
Podium.
called? Podium. Yeah, that's it
Yeah.
right there. Well, do they even have a podium now? I feel like everybody calls in from like they have their representatives, like their spokesperson, but I feel like people
Well,
call in nowadays.
it used to be like you'd have all 32 organizations in a room, and then like you'd write down the ticket, and then you'd go to the podium. Now, yeah, they like phone in the
Yeah. Yeah.
official pick, but
COVID really COVID really, allowed the streamline. That's like the ultimate, like when people were saying like this meeting could have been virtual. It's like the NFL draft is like this whole meeting could have been virtual the entire time.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but Will Campbell though, selection here, I mean, I think it's just pretty obvious. This offensive line for San Francisco definitely has deteriorated. Trent Williams is getting up there in age. I don't even think Will Campbell will be a left tackle, but getting him on the interior is going to help out a bunch for this team overall. Picking out here with the Dallas Cowboys. If you're a fan of the channel, though, you know kind of my thoughts on like what the Cowboys' needs are. I think it's everything but quarterback. And so here they really could go Malachi Starks. They could go receiver. They could maybe go Josh Simmons, Tyler Warren, or somebody else here. But I end up going with Mike Green. I think with his speed and his overall size, and you see his sack production, and put him across from Micah Parsons, I think that would be an extremely interesting combination, especially for what Dallas is trying to do. Like I said, there's so many different routes the Cowboys could go, and I think Mike Green, he's been shooting up draft boards. I'm still going to be curious overall if his size is going to be a little bit of a detriment to him. But that being said, though, too, I I think it's pretty easy now days for guys to put 10 pounds on and not lose a step, especially too if Mike Green's what 230, 240. I
No, he
think
was
if
251 at the Senior Bowl.
Oh, he's 251. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm thinking of the numbers, I think, before even the Senior Bowl. Oh, so even then though too, that's Micah Parsons size. Micah Parsons,
yeah,
255, 260. So I take that back then. And so I'm pretty sure what he was 6'4", right?
yeah. He's like 6'4", 251. He had fairly long arms, if I remember right, as
Yeah,
well.
so maybe I'm thinking of Donovan Ezraku as well, but so Mike Green though I still think that'd be a very interesting combination. Just get an absolute deadly edge rusher do or something similar that Jacksonville has, and so here's where I shake things up a little bit, and so I really do think my preferred candidate overall for the selection for Miami would be Kenneth Grant. They are going to be losing Calais Campbell and Kenneth Grant. I think size wise is pretty similar as well. Going to be in that defensive interior, but he was already taken. So I try to also look at what were some other defensive interior guys here that they can address. And obviously, they could go offensive line here. They maybe could go Malachi Starks, but I'm kind of waiting to see what happens with Javon Holland and Jordan Poyer in free agency before I really kind of pull the trigger on Miami taking a safety. So here, Derek Harmon is a guy I really like. You just go look at his numbers. You go look at his production. He had a lot of hurries, especially too being a Pac-12 team. First time in the Big Ten as well. And Big Ten, this historically has had some pretty meaty offensive lines, and he was very effective over there as well. I think he would provide a really good interior pass rush and just a lot of pressure as well for this team. And if you go look at that division once again, New York Jets, they have a pretty weak offensive line, but improving. The Patriots, for all their offensive line woes, I think you'd agree they actually have a pretty defensive interior, but with a very mobile quarterback in Drake May. And same thing could be said, I think, about Josh Allen and the Bills as well. So you're going to want to find somebody that can provide a lot of hurries. And in college, Derek Carmen, he's got the numbers to do it. So I think that would be a very interesting selection. Maybe a little high. Maybe you want to go Walter Nolan. Maybe you want to go Tyleek Williams. But here I went with Derek Harmon. And so moving on now to number 14. Pretty vanilla pick here now. Tyler Warren. This makes a lot of sense, especially to the way the draft has gone so far. A lot of edge rushers gone off the board. There's maybe you could go DB, but once again, I think you just get better value here actually with Tyler Warren. Maybe it's a little high for Jade Barron. Need to see more on Benjamin Morrison, see how his hip does, if he is going to be able to go in the combine before I maybe pull the trigger on Indianapolis taking them here. I think that would be a good selection. But here, Tyler Warren, they need a tight end spot as of right now, just absolutely desperately. And you go see the production that Tyler Warren provided at Penn State. He was, I think, the Penn State offense, and so
Yeah.
he got them very far, all the way to semifinals. And so, and Penn State had a good defense. Not to take anything away from them. So here now with the Atlanta Falcons, it's widely known how awful the pass rush is for Atlanta. I think they're definitely going to do something about that in free agency and also in this draft as well. They only have 4 picks, so this is a very viable trade back spot. But trying to mix it up here a little bit. They are losing Justin Simmons in free agency, or well, he is a free agent. I don't know if they'll want to re-sign him. And I think if you go to get a guy like Malachi Starks, pair him up with Jesse Bates, who's one of the better free safeties in the league. AJ Terrell now is their lockdown corner. I wouldn't be surprised also too if they try and go after a number 2 corner as well in free agency. So really kind of rounding out this secondary, because the one area that we did see success was like after our bye, and we just kind of increased our blitzes. The improvement from Caden Ellis, our linebacker as well. I think that helped out our defense a lot as a whole, especially too when it came to getting sacks and getting after the quarterback. So here, I think they're going to go safety, keep a guy in state. Malachi Starks is just an extremely good football player. We're seeing a
Yeah.
lot of these teams now, very similar to like the 2 running back tandem that a lot of teams are going. I think this is another move as well. A lot of teams are going with that like strong safety that they can just move around into nickel or into the box, and Malachi Starks can do that. So, uh,
Yeah.
moving on
Uh,
now to go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna cut in here and kinda do, like, the last 5 picks,
Yeah, go ahead.
really quick, but I think Will Campbell at 11 is fantastic value. Mike Green across from Micah Parsons, I think, is a really good pass rushing duo. Uh, Tyler Warren to the Colts, I mean, that's, like, the most vanilla pick there.
Yeah,
Right now, like, everybody is it just makes so much sense. And I like Malachi Starks. I think you add a safety like that on the back end of this defense. If you can bring back Matthew Judon, you have a lot of young guys going into their second year that can potentially develop, and that pass rush can just kind of continue to improve upon the progress it made throughout the season. The pick I'm not super sold on is the Derek Harmon pick. I think that's really high for a guy like him. Um,
yep,
but I just like I do think the Dolphins could address the interior. The guy that a lot of people are talking about rising up right now is Walter Nolan. I think he could sneak his way into like the mid to late first round.
I agree.
And then I think Derek Harmon is like the day 2 version of him, though. Derek Harmon was more of a run stuffing defensive tackle in 2023. He actually lost weight, sacrificed some of that run stuffing ability, and became a much more efficient pass rusher in 2024. And so I think teams will like that. And he's definitely moving up draft boards, but I do think at 13, maybe that's a little rich for him. With that being said, like I do know a lot of people that are like pounding the table for Derek Harmon. Like a lot of people do really like his game and what he brings to the table. So maybe you're just ahead of the curve on mocking Derek Harmon here.
I'm normally I rarely outsmart people, but in this instance, I am outsmarting everybody else. It's
Okay.
except for the people that obviously agree with me. But great point about Walter Nolan. I agree. I think he's rising up draft boards. I think he's rising up all the way to number 16 overall. Arizona Cardinals, they need a lot of help. Just on the defensive line as a whole. Once again, too, I've already mentioned this name. I think Kenneth Grant would be great for this spot. But obviously he was taken number 9th overall in this draft class. But I think in a guy like Walter Nolan, uh, also had a lot of great production overall in Ole Miss, and similar to I think the reason why you go after Derek Carmen, though, but it's like a guy that can provide a lot of good pressure on the interior and really explosive as well. So, especially for his overall size. Here at Cincinnati, keeping a guy in state here. This is a guy I really like if you've been watching our mock drafts, and just Tyleek Williams from Ohio State. He's just a guy, one, just really good run defender as well, but also, two, doesn't seem like he doesn't lose his one on one battles that often. And I think a team like Cincinnati, they just need more consistency from that defensive line. And I think getting a guy like that, they're going to be keeping Trey Hendrickson, which I hope they do, even though it seems like he might be the lone man out if they do go and re-sign T. Higgins. But that being said, though, I think you go get Tyleek Williams, really help out this offensive line, keep him in state as well. And I think the Cincinnati Bengals defense is going to improve a lot. And so uh, here now at number 18, Seattle Seahawks. One, I think a lot of different routes they could go. They could go offensive line, but I think now at this point, the offensive lineman that you're going to get here is not going to be too different. I think. I mean, there's going to be some differences, obviously, but especially on the interior side, but not too big of a difference from now versus like the second or third round. So I'm just trying to think of other just players that they can go and get, and a guy that I'm going for, and I'm still kind of high on as well, just because of his overall versatility and his explosiveness. And if you go look at what type of defense Seattle likes to do, which is that 3-4 defense, a guy like Jalen Walker, I think would be very intriguing in this defensive setup. I think he might be a linebacker. Yeah, he's a
Yeah,
linebacker
he's
there. Yeah,
oh, was he there? Was he in
yeah,
linebacker?
he was a
Oh,
linebacker. Exactly. No one knows where he plays. That's how versatile he
oh,
is.
there.
Even
Okay.
PFF doesn't know. And so once again, maybe similar to Derek Harmon, but trying to mix it up here a little bit. I think he would bring a very interesting component to this Seattle Seahawks defense. Played about half his snaps on the defensive line, half his snaps in the box in college. So I think if you can go and move him around a lot, drop him back into coverage, you can really be sneaky on your defensive schemes. I think a guy as smart as like Mike McDonald and his defensive presence, I think would really like that versatility overall. So one thing about this draft, I'm sure you've probably have noticed, or maybe haven't noticed, and you're about to find out, is that there has been no trades so far. And this is where I actually have my first trade coming off the board. Tampa Bay fans, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts about them potentially trading back. But one of the reasons why I think I went this route is there are still some edge rushers available, yes. But if you go look at this draft, there has been a lot of defensive line and just defensive players as a whole taken off the board as of right now. Maybe they could go secondary, but I still think there's going to be good value if you trade back to late in the first round. And a team here that is extremely incentivized to go and find more skill position players or maybe even more offensive linemen are going to be the Super Bowl runner-ups, the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs have 4 picks in the top 100, 2 picks as of like just a couple picks apart as of right now. They only have 5 picks total, but the points wise almost trade out as if you do the 31st pick and I did the 63rd pick. And so I think Tampa Bay might want that leverage, but that straight up, the Tampa Bay moves back 12 spots, yes. But if you go look at their overall team needs, which is just going to be edge rushers, it's going to be secondary guys. I think this is going to be a very favorable trade back spot, especially to them for Tampa Bay, and they get another day 2 pick as well. And so here, another reason why I think Kansas City would want to trade up to this spot. If you go look at the next 3 teams, Denver, Pittsburgh, and the Chargers, 2 of them are one division rivals, but also, and I would say Pittsburgh is also just a rival in general because it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. But all 3 of those teams are going to need skill position players as well. So Kansas City luckily hasn't only one skill position player, 2, if you include Ashton Genty, has been taken off the board. So now Kansas City is aggressive because they want to get back to the Super Bowl. We obviously saw the offensive line production as well. We also saw the lack of skill position player production as well. So I think this could be an either or. I went with the skill position player. I went with Luther Burden. Obviously, we
Okay.
all remember what Tyreek Hill was like in this offense here. And I'm not saying Luther Burden will be like Tyreek Hill. I'm going to say he's better. No, I'm just joking. But I do think if you get this Luther Burden guy and who's a yak machine, you just get the ball in his hands and he can go and create. I think one just in general, it might alleviate some of the pain already from this defense or from this offensive line in general, because teams are going to have to plan and scheme and stay in their lanes to prevent Luther Burden from taking off. Also, too, you are going to get Rashi Rice back next year as well. Who knows what's going to happen with Travis Kelsey? To be honest, if I think just his veteran presence would be good for the team, but if you're looking at the production, I think that's
Yeah.
something you can go and draft and can start to go and get a younger guy to start to build and maybe get the next Travis Kelce. But here, one, I made the trade, so obviously I'm going to say I like it. But just the mindset of it, though, you go look at the motion offense that Andy Reid likes to do and the flow of everything. Take a lot of pressure off Patrick Mahomes, a lot of pressure off of this offensive line in general to go get a guy that you can kind of be like Tyreek Hill a little bit, like just throw him the ball and let him create. So I think another potential sneaky option maybe is Omari and Hampton as well, just really help out that running game. But this running back class is extremely deep. I think they can go and get that with their next pick or even with their third round pick. So uh,
Yeah.
moving on though now to Denver. So they did miss out on Luther Burden, but I think another great option here is going to be Emeka Egbuka, just a very consistent, solid receiver that Bo Nix can rely on. Sean Payton, I think, can scheme a lot of guys open as well. It's Emeka Egbuka, just a very solid receiver. I am going to say this though, just as a caveat. I am curious how NFL teams are going to think about Emeka Egbuka, just because he is going to be more of a purely slot receiver. You can maybe make the argument about that with Luther Burden as well, but I think there's a lot of other versatile traits that Luther Burden brings to the table that Emeka Egbuka might not have, but he is an amazing receiver as well, and you've seen it from his Ohio State career. But I just bring that up specifically, like maybe that might drop him down a peg or two, maybe to late first round or early second round, just
Mhm.
because of that maybe limited capabilities. But also too, maybe that's just very similar to what we saw with Brian Thomas Jr., how he was almost classified specifically as an X receiver because he had Malik Neighbors next to him. Maybe Emeka Egbuka has kind of been put in that slot role just because he's had Marvin Harrison Jr., he's had Jeremiah Smith, he's had Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, all these guys around him who are
Yeah.
all number one receivers on their teams. So maybe there's a lot more to be seen from Emeka Egbuka. He's just been an Ohio State receiver, and Ohio State is, I would say, decently good at producing good receivers.
Yeah, and I also think too, there's something to be said for guys that are like a high end number two. Like I joke, there's like 1A receivers, like your Justin
Yeah.
Jeffersons, your Jamar Chases, and then there's like the 1Bs. And I think Emeka Egbuka could develop into being one of the best like 1B receivers. He's never going to be like the engine of an offense, but like dude can definitely make some clutch plays in key scenarios. I talk about it all the time. About 2 out of every 3 catches he made in college football was for a first down in 2024. And so, like, yeah, he's not going to be like the most explosive playmaker, but he's going to be the guy that's going to keep the chains moving, keep drives going, and just be a really critical part of each offense. And so, really quick, last 5 picks. I mean, I like all of them. I do like the Chiefs moving up and snagging Luther Burden. I think he's a guy that a lot of people are sleeping on just because he had a worse 2024, but the
Yeah.
whole Missouri team kind of took a step back. And so with limited draft capital, I think that they're a potential move up team to if they're going to target either a skill position player or an offensive tackle.
Yeah.
So
I do agree with that because I even thought about that too. Like, because even kind of just watch the Super Bowl, I was like, this team, like, they need so much help.
yeah,
And then with that, essentially 2 second round pick. I mean, they're late second round, 63rd and 66, which I think is the first or second pick in the third round. But it'd be
the
like
second.
they're going to be aggressive, go move up, go get the guy that they want. I think that's the luxury though of having like 2 clear weaknesses. Is it's like they can go up and get an offensive tackle that they really like, or go get a skill position player that they like. They probably won't do that for an offensive tackle. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. But I think with Luther Burden being there, I think that would be the preferred option to go to. So
Mhm.
moving on now, I'll finish up the rest of these 12 picks here. And so this I feel like this guy is going to be a fan favorite. Yeah, I think he already is a fan favorite with everything that happened to him and his family with the New Orleans terror attack. But I think Jack Besh is going to be rising up these boards. And if you go and look at the needs that Pittsburgh has, and with Luther Burden and Emeka Egbuka off the board, I don't believe Pittsburgh I don't believe Jack Besh is going to make it to Pittsburgh's second round pick. I think he's going to be an early second round pick probably. So that's why I feel like this isn't too much of a reach here because I feel like a reach maybe might be what I did with Derek Harmon, where he probably would be there with their second round, like with their second round pick potentially. I have to kind of wait and see.
Yeah,
Jack Besh though, I don't think he's like he might make it out of the first round. But he's not making it too far in the second round with his overall versatility and what we saw with him at the Senior Bowl. If you go look at what
mhm.
Pittsburgh really struggles with, is going to be their skill position players. And George Pickens is a great X receiver, but they need a much more improved slot receiver. I think Jack Best brings that. So here with Los Angeles Chargers, they missed out on that kind of run of receivers. They could go get another receiver, but I think that could be something that they will wait on just because they have the run of receivers. But they do need another skill position, and that is going to be running back. Here I have Amari Hampton going to the Los Angeles Chargers. I think that would be a great fit overall. Could they go offensive line? Yes, there's going to be a lot of guys here that I'm about to name in a second that they could end up going with, but I think Omari Hampton, and you've talked about it. You're a Tech fan. You've seen him play live. Dude's just an absolute stud. I mean, bowling ball
Yeah.
size guy, can catch the ball out of the backfield, super hard to tackle. I think this is a Jim Harbaugh kind of running back. And so I think he's really going to like it. I think Justin Herbert's really going to like it. Nothing
Yeah.
against J.K. Dobbins or Gus Edwards, but I can see him having a really good rookie year in Los Angeles. So
Mhm.
moving on now to Green Bay. Secondary for me, and this is kind of about that spot. Benjamin Morrison has fallen. I think he could rise up some draft boards here, depending on how his combine goes. If he performs, how his interviews go, how his test results do. But just as of right now, I think this is just going to be a good overall spot for him. We've all seen him play last year. Well, in 2023, when he was healthy for a full year and was one of the best lockdown corners, I think would have been maybe a top pick in last year's class, top defensive pick, I should say, in last year's class. If he was eligible. So, but here though, think Green Bay gets a amazing cornerback here. Just need to double check overall on the injuries. And so here I do have another trade. So Cleveland, they did get their quarterback of the future. By that I mean just of the next couple of years till they need to draft a new one. No offense to Cam Ward. It's just more the history of Cleveland Browns quarterbacks. But they want to get a offensive lineman to help protect him. And I think Josh Simmons' value, similar to Benjamin Morrison, I think this I think it's worth a couple picks here. They have so many picks, and a team like Minnesota wants to trade back. So I did 94, and then I think it was 178, I believe.
Okay.
That math kind of checks out. I'm trying to remember exactly the second round pick for Cleveland, or that the early third round pick, the math is it's too lopsided towards Minnesota. And I don't think Cleveland would want to make that trade. But so I think and Minnesota wants just more overall picks. So that's why
Mhm.
I went this route. But Josh Simmons, though, if he didn't get hurt, he would have been top five pick. Abdul Carter wouldn't be taken by your Patriots. The Patriots would be taking Josh Simmons. That's how good this guy is. That's how explosive this guy is. And similar to Benjamin Morrison, have to see how his combine goes, if he is going to be able to go in the combine, or how his interviews do and how his medical reports come back. But I still think he's going to be a first round pick. You keep him in the state here as well. And I think you get a lockdown left tackle for the foreseeable years to come. Here with Houston, they also need a lot of offensive line help. And similar to Green Bay, like I'm really just kind of looking at interior offensive linemen here. This is about the spot where they're coming off of. So Gray Zabel is the guy I'm going to be going with. They could go Donovan Jackson. They could go Tyler Booker. Those are the guys that I have been seeing here as well. Are they have him as tackle still in here?
Yeah, he played tackle in college, but he's going to be an
He's
interior
gonna
offensive
kick in the
lineman.
guard. Yeah, so
Yeah.
he's tackle here, but he's gonna kick in the guard, and I think he might be the guy that might have made the most amount of money from senior day. Mike
Yeah.
Green actually might best him in that category, but still, Grade's able though. An amazing senior day. It's gonna be fun seeing him at the combine, but extremely versatile offensive lineman that they can move around the entire offensive line, and that's something that Houston desperately needs. So here with the Los Angeles Rams, it is interesting to think about tight end here. I didn't end up going that route, but just thinking more and more about it, Colson Loveland would be very interesting in this system, especially too now with Cooper Cup moving on. They might want to have another reliable option for them to lean on. But here, I did end up sticking with secondary. That's a major need for this team. I do think they're going to re-sign Alaric Jackson in free agency, and if they do end up doing that as well, they'll probably end up taking some more offensive linemen, maybe late day 2, or really focus on that in day 3. The Rams have done an amazing job drafting overall, so I guarantee you that, no offense to Siobhan Revelle, who I'm selecting here, but if the Rams the Rams don't want to take Siobhan Revell. There's a very good reason why they don't want to take him, and I fully trust the Los Angeles Rams organization in what they're doing. They've drafted extremely well. I do like Siobhan Revell. He's another guy, though, similar to Benjamin Morrison and Josh Simmons. He got hurt early on in the year, but he's got the intangibles that you're looking for in a cornerback. He's 6'2", 6'3". He's got the length. He's a lockdown corner. I know it's just East Carolina, but go look at Quinton Mitchell from Toledo. A lot of people said that about the MAC, and Quinton Mitchell had an amazing rookie season overall in Philadelphia. So I think they can maybe expect something similar from Siobhan Revell, especially too with how much that defensive line has been improving in just that front seven as a whole. Here with the Baltimore Ravens, I thought long and hard about this pick. There's a lot of receivers were taken off the board. Maybe they could go receiver as well. Guys like Jaden Higgins were still available. Savion Williams. Who else? Alec Manor is also still available. I ended up going with cornerback here. I know they drafted Nate Wiggins in last year's class, but I think you go get a guy like Jahdae Barron, who is extremely versatile. He can help out in the nickel. He can help out with Kyle Hamilton and Darius Washington as well in the safety. Well, they're going to be safeties, but like they can just help out in the secondary and just be more reliable as well for this John Harbaugh defense. And because they're going to be providing a lot of great pressure from the defensive line, they just need more consistent play from their secondary. And that did improve as the season went on. But a guy like Jahdae Barron, though, who has played in multiple different positions throughout his entire college career, I think can come in and at minimum provide good depth his rookie year if there are injuries, and can come in play nickel, play strong. I would say strong safety, but can help out a lot in that secondary. So here with Detroit, uh, there's so many great edge rushers here, and I think this is going to be an edge rusher spot. I went with Nick Scorton. I think you could easily go Michael Williams. You could easily go Shamar Stewart if those are the guys that you really like. Maybe even Jack Sawyer. But with Nick Scorton, though, I think he's got the size. I also think he's got the motor that Dan Campbell is looking for here as well. I think he'd be an amazing complement to Aiden Hutchinson on the other side of him, and then even too with Aleem McNeil on the interior as well. So Nick Scorton going there. Washington Commanders. I ended up going with your boy Donovan Ezaraku. Is it Ezaraku or Ezarake?
It's Ezaraku.
Ezaraku. But Dan Quinn, they've been running at least last year, and I think with the defensive line setup that they have, they've been running a lot of 3-4s a defense. So getting a tinier outside linebacker type guy, I think would really fit their system as a whole. Dante Fowler Jr., he is hitting free agency. They could easily re-sign him, but he was their sack leader last year. And I think getting a guy like Donovan Ezaraku, whether that's through him or there's another guy too that was hitting free agency as well. Let's see if I can find the Washington Commanders here.
Was it Cleveland Farrell?
Klein Farrell, I think, was one. Let me go and look here. Jeremy Chin, Dante Fowler Jr., Bobby Wagner, but he's definitely more middle linebacker as well. Klein Farrell. Is it Cleveland Farrell? I think
Cleveland.
I'm gonna defer to your judgment when it comes to pronouncing names. But there's a lot of guys. I think he can come in and at minimum be a good rotational piece at first. I think Dan Quinn can really work him up, and he could see a lot of great success being on this Washington Commanders defense, just with the overall attention and power that Jonathan Payne. Is it Jonathan Payne?
No, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne.
That's it. Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne and Jersey Newton bring to the table just by themselves as those three defensive tackles with the defense that they run. So I think he'd be a great complement to them as a whole. Here at number 30, Buffalo Bills, once again, I think they could go in a lot of different directions. They could go offensive line, defensive line, secondary as well. And receiver is what I ended up going with here. Maybe another a little bit of a stretch, but Ryan, I'll definitely allow you to talk about this guy here in a second. But you're a big fan of Jalen Royals. I think he's a great complement to what they currently have as right now. Keon Coleman's going to be that X, that deep ball guy. Khalil Shakur, I think, is going to be that Y, that guy that is going to be that slot receiver that can be very shifty over the middle. They have Dalton Kincaid, but if you're looking for just that guy, I think that could be the number one guy that they're kind of like do it all kind of guy. That's going to be Jalen Royals here. He did have a shortened season from Utah State, but I even think, too, through 7 games, he had like 850, 900 receiving yards. And I know it's Utah State, but still, like the dude looks great on film. I know you really like him. A lot of guys are liking him. Maybe it's a little bit of a stretch, but once again, though, too, I just don't want to be picking the same receiver names over and over again doing this mock
Yeah.
draft. So,
It's not
um,
sorry, it's not as much of a stretch as like the Derek Harmon pick. I definitely think like a team could fall in love with him. And I do think he would fit into that Buffalo system well. So
yeah,
he's a really good football player.
I did think long and hard between him and Matthew Golden, but I felt like maybe Matthew Golden had a little bit more of an overlap with Keon Coleman than Jalen Royals did, and so that's why I lean toward Jalen Royals. Jaden Higgins to me is a great receiver, yes, but I mean you drafted Keon Coleman last year, and I think
Yeah, that's
Jaden
too
Higgins
similar.
is very similar, and so Xavier Restrepo I think is very similar to Khalil Shakur, and then same with
Yeah.
Alec Manor. Sorry, Alec Manor is similar to Keon Coleman.
Yeah.
Not same with Khalil Shakur. I want to be very
Yeah.
specific on that. So I think Jalen Royals or Matthew Golden to me are going to be those two options. And Matthew Golden had a great playoff, and I think that's why he's higher up on boards. I think if you put the two side by side, that's what's going to be great about this combine. I'm going to be very curious on how these two receivers, Matthew Golden and Jalen Royals, compare because those two to me seem like the kind of guys that you could move around an offensive line
Yeah.
move around in an offensive system more so than Xavier Restrepo, and then even to like Alec Manor, who are specific, I think, in their kind of spots.
Yeah.
In my opinion, we'll have to kind of wait and see. So, last two picks here, to me personally, for Tampa Bay, Donovan Ezraku would be the preferred pick here with that 3-4 defense that they have. You go get that outside linebacker. I did end up going with Michael Williams. And so if you don't like that edge rusher pick, I think it's good value. And so I've gone Shamar Stewart in the past just because of he's bigger than uh, Clyde Chikansey, and also I'm pretty sure it's Logan Hall is the guy here. Let me
Yeah.
pull
They
this
have a
up.
rotation
Yeah,
there
they
as
have a
well.
rotation, so like maybe they'd want to go and do that with um, with Shamar Stewart, so to say. But I ended up going with Michael Williams. I think he can help out a lot. He can maybe be that outside linebacker, edge rusher that's coming from a standing up position as well. Maybe he can get down into three technique, but we'll kind of have to wait and see. But once again, though, too, I think it could just be any defensive player here. They could go cornerback as well. I think who are some of the corners that are still available?
You have Trey Amos, Darian Porter, Maxwell Harrison. I mean, Trey Amos is the only guy that's remotely close to being in this tier. All these other guys, I think, are like late second to third round picks.
Well, and in this scenario too, you've now gained an additional second, so you
Yeah.
could once again that might be a spot where those guys are going to be more fall into. So kind of the wait
Yeah.
and see. Curious to hear how Tampa fans think of my draft for these guys, especially to trading back, going back so far. But still, though, I think you got Michael Williams at 31. You're going to get an additional second round pick where a lot of cornerbacks are there. You can be kind of aggressive as well with your 51st pick. So, last pick here for Philadelphia. They're going to be so hard to draft. One, it's they're the 32nd overall pick. They're going to be the last pick in every round. But two, you kind of look at this team and like what weaknesses do they really have? Where can they really improve on? Maybe kicker. Like maybe they can do a first round kicker. No offense to Jake Elliott or anything, even though he had a great Super Bowl. But here, they really like to draft Georgia defensive players. And one thing though, too, they do have Cam Jurgens, an Alabama offensive lineman. So that was like literally my logic is let's see what happens with Mekhi Becton. But I think you go get Tyler Booker, who you can make an argument is the best pure interior offensive lineman coming up in this draft. And I think putting him there in Philadelphia, worst case scenario is offensive line depth, and you get one of the top guards, like pure guards in this class. So that's my draft. That's my seventh draft. It's going to be fun. We really only have a couple more. I think we have three or four more both leading up to the 2025 NFL draft.
Yeah,
So
I think so. So I'm looking forward to it. Uh just want to give my 2 cents on some of the last 12 picks there. I like Jack Besh. I think teams tend to draft high character guys higher, and I think Jack Besh, especially through all of um the tragedy with his family in the New Orleans day uh
terrorist attack.
terrorist attack, I think is something that really showed his high character as well. I like Omarion Hampton. I like Benjamin Morrison. Josh Simmons, that's a trade that makes a lot of sense. Gray Zabel, Siobhan Ravel. Like a lot of these picks make a lot of sense. I don't love the Michael Williams one. I think they could have gone more like a Princely Uman Mielen, Kyle
That's
Kennard,
fair.
like kind of guys that are in that tier that might be a little bit more like true pass rushers. The only thing I will say is Micah Williams is a phenomenal run defender. And then you also look like he was lined up like over a tackle, like kind of in like a 5 technique almost, a lot of times at Georgia. And I think if you actually get him outside a tackle, like I'm not saying in like a wide 9 like you would like a Will McDonald, but go and like put him out wide, I think that would give this defensive front a little bit more flexibility than just going and drafting a guy that is going to play like a specific role. Because Michael Williams is a good enough athlete. He could also play standing up sometimes. So
Yeah.
all in
Yeah.
all, I really like this draft. The one major quarrel that I have, you did not draft Kelvin Banks Jr. or Armand Membu. Those are my 2 tackles that I think are going to go probably somewhere in the teens to like early 20s. And so I'm curious, like why no Kelvin Banks or Armand Membu?
So Kelvin Banks, I could see that. I think it could be fair criticism. I think it's just kind of the way the board panned out. Armand
Yeah.
Membu, I'm not saying he's not a first round talent though, but I'm curious to see how he's going to stack up just in general. Like he's super good. Don't get me wrong, but are teams gonna maybe wait on offensive alignment, like unless if there's kind of more of a pure a sure thing. Like Josh Simmons, for
Yeah.
example, like that could be your Kelvin Banks. I can understand why teams would want to maybe wait on Josh Simmons.
Yeah.
I really like him though. I kind of normally tend to defer to how great modern medicine is that guys can come back from these kind of pretty bad leg injuries and not really
Mhm.
miss too much of a beat, especially too from like the trenches as well. Maybe if it's skill position players, like I don't think Tank Dell is going to ever return to the style of
Yeah.
player that he's going to be. But so I have to kind of wait and see. But Calvin Banks, I can maybe understand your point. I do still think that it's still possible that Calvin Banks misses the first round. Gonna have to see how the combine
So I
goes
actually
for
do
him.
agree with that.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no,
Go
no. I
ahead.
was just gonna say, uh, we'll have to see how the combine goes. It just for me when I watched it on film, it's nothing against Calvin Banks, but it's like and same thing like with Ariane Theorsary or even with Armand Membu. There's just something about them that I'm just not entirely stoked about. When you go watch a healthy Josh Simmons on tape, dude is just exploding these defensive linemen.
Yeah.
Dude's just an absolute beast, and the way he can move at that size is remarkable. I just don't really see that as much with Kelvin Banks. I think Armand Membu, I see that a little bit more, but he is also a little bit tinier. So like, how are teams
Yeah.
going to value that?
Yeah, and that's totally fair. I actually do agree with the point that Calvin Banks could potentially slide. Like I think of all the tackles that are in the first round, like I think he has the greatest chance of sliding. I do just think like there is a level of talent and a level of um like pedigree there where teams will take a chance on him. Like I think in my last mock draft I had the Patriots trade up for Calvin Banks at 24.
Yeah.
So like I can't be like overly critical of it.
Well,
I'm more just asking like why leave him out? But it definitely
I'll
makes
take
sense.
him. In my next mock draft, I'll take him top 10 for you, just so you
You
don't.
want the Patriots to take him at 4?
I'll have
Yeah.
the Patriots take him at 4. Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
It's no,
No, no,
I'll have the
no.
Patriots. I'm gonna have the Patriots take Ashton Genty. That's how I'm gonna
Yeah.
have taken.
No. Gosh. No, and like I do like Kelvin Banks. I think he brings a lot of good things to the table. I in a weird way, like I actually like Armand Membu at tackle more than Kelvin Banks. I just think Armand Membu is really good. His biggest drawback is that he's 6'3". I mean, and he's completely dominated
Yeah,
SEC competition this past season. So I don't know. I think it's a really interesting tackle class, but that is kind of like that point of what we were saying, what I said at pick 15 was like there is a clear separation between the guys that are going to go top 12 to 15 versus like 15 through 40 or 50, where like those guys could really fall anywhere.
yeah, yeah. Well,
So
and that's exactly it. And so, and it's even one of the things too with Armand Membu over Kelvin Banks, and maybe I just haven't seen it with Kelvin Banks yet. Like maybe I just need to go watch the right film, but I do see more Josh Simmons in Armand Membu just with that explosiveness and his ability to move
yeah,
downfield. While in comparison to like Kelvin Banks or Ariane Theorsary, I haven't seen that nearly as much. Both guys are really good tackles in their own right, yes. But I also I'm having some of my own personal bias, but like I want athletic freaks on my team, and then we'll figure it out. if that makes sense. It's like you want to have that versatility if you're doing
Yeah.
these screen passes. Like if you do a screen pass or screen play, or if you're running and you're doing these zone blocking schemes, I want to, I want a guy that's 300 plus pounds that can run close to like a 5 second 40 or something like that. And then also super strong. I know that's very generic. Everybody would want that. And so, but I tend to lean towards that versus like a guy like Ariante Ursary size, who he is 6'6", 340 or something like that. Like an absolute, like just Stonewall Jackson type guy. Like you don't know how to get around him because he's just physically so big. But then when it comes, I think it might limit your offense a little bit when it comes to like running downhill.
Yeah.
Sorry, running downhill more in like screen plays or screen passes, kind of where the league is going a little bit more in those motion offense. So maybe I'm wrong. I'm just seeing that just from my own analysis. And this is why I say the combine is going to be a lot of fun because we can just literally put these guys side by side. And once again, we did that partially with the Senior Bowl, and now with the combine, it's going to be the best of the best. These are going to be the guys that go in the top 200 picks, and so we
Yeah.
get to put all these guys side by side.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to the combine. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's a week and a half away, which is kind of crazy to think about. But no, I think this mock draft, all in all, was really solid. I'm enjoying doing these, and I look forward to doing the rest of them throughout this draft cycle. So
Good.
let's go ahead. Let's wrap up this video here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That is the best way to help out the channel. If you have not already, oh, whoops, I did that. Oh, well, just like and subscribe is the best way to help out the channel. And other than that, we'll see you guys next time.